Steve, did Ezekiel lie on his side or lay on his side for 430 days?
Well, I said that he's lying on his side, but I don't know if that's grammatically correct.
This is the Bible in fewer words. We are Carol and Steve Wells. This is episode 200, Ezekiel, chapters 4 through 6. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Carol. 200.
It's a nice number.
Yeah. In the last episode, God in a UFO visited Ezekiel.
Yes, he
and
did.
Ezekiel saw something that looked like, well, some people say it was a UFO, but it was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he also saw God and God's loins and all that.
He ate a scroll.
Yeah.
Yes. And how does a person eat a scroll?
You just eat it, I guess.
So it's made like a papyrus or something, like some Egyptian,
that's a good
fabric?
question. What was it made out of?
There's quite a bit of chewing probably going on
I'll
there.
bet that wasn't easy, but it tasted like honey.
Let's see what happens this time.
Yeah.
Okay. Chapter 4. God said to Ezekiel, "Son of man, take a tile and draw Jerusalem on it."
Now that's quite an art project, isn't it?
Yes, it is. All of Jerusalem, like this, where the cities are, and with a crayon. Is he doing that with a marker of some kind?
I'm picturing him having a tile that's sort of made out of a material that he can carve on.
Okay.
So he can maybe carve Jerusalem out of it. But maybe he's just drawing it, like with charcoal, like you say.
Okay.
And then he says, show a battle taking place with a fort and battering rams. And use an iron pan for a wall around the city. This will be a sign to everyone in Israel.
A sign of what?
A sign of a prophet doing an art project? Notice that I didn't leave anything out there.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the first 3 verses of chapter 4. And that's all there is, really.
Verse 4. Lie on your left side for 390 days? Really?
Yeah.
For the number of years of Israel's guilt. Lie on your right side for 40 days, for the number of years of Judah's guilt.
Yeah. So people have been trying to figure out what this might mean.
As am I.
Yeah.
Go ahead, explain it to me, please.
Okay. If you remember, Israel was taken over first by the Assyrians. It was in 722 BCE.
Yes.
And then later in 586 BCE, 150-ish years later, Jerusalem is destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, Babylonians.
Yeah.
So you can see if he's talking about from the time that Israel was destroyed to the time that Judah was destroyed, the time for Israel would be longer than the time for Judah, but not that much longer.
Yeah,
so
according to this, it's really a lot longer.
So it doesn't really fit. I don't know. That's my guess.
All right, I will ponder upon that a little while, but not right now.
In verse 8, it goes on to say that I will tie you up with ropes. I here is God.
Really?
God's going to get down there. He knows knots, ropes and knots.
And he has already presented himself to Ezekiel, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah, they're good friends by now.
Okay.
Well, not good friends, but Ezekiel's seen him.
Yeah.
And God's talking.
More than just him. He's seen intimate parts of him.
That's right. And now God's going to get down there and tie him up. So I'll tie you up with ropes so that you won't turn from one side to the other until you're done with your 430 days.
So he's going to be laying on his side for 430 days.
Yeah.
Well, 390 days on his left side.
Yeah, maybe then God unties him and then ties him up again and he's for another 40 days.
He's going to get bed sores or grass sores or something.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough because he's not going to be able to, I guess, take bathroom breaks or anything.
And his hands will be tied down as well? Or his hands will be loose so he can do
It doesn't
things?
say about his hands.
All
I don't think so because now the next section, he's going to be using his hands.
Okay. So verse 9, God said to Ezekiel, "Get some wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and spelt to make bread with it." Do they have all that stuff there?
I guess he must have it available. Does this ring any bells with you, this verse? Ezekiel 4:9.
Oh, I think in the grocery store they sell Ezekiel 4:9 bread.
They do indeed. It's a very popular bread, and it's pretty good bread. And apparently it's made with this recipe.
Really?
Yeah, that's where Ezekiel 4:9 bread comes from, is from this idea.
And do you think the guy who makes the bread is giving God credit for this recipe?
Oh, by calling it Ezekiel 4:9, I guess he kind of is.
Okay.
Yeah. God goes on to say, eat 20 shekels of this bread each day while you're lying on your side, along with 1/6 of a hin of water. That turns out to be a little less than half a pound of bread and about a little less than a liter of water.
A liter bit bigger than a quart. So is he eating his bread rye, cooking it? What's the deal there?
Oh, it doesn't say. I haven't
Yes.
really condensed it at all.
Okay.
This recipe has a list of ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have too much of an instruction.
Instructions, I think. Verse 12, bake the bread with human dung. So he is baking it.
I don't know how he's going to do this because he's lying on his side and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe these are instructions he's giving him before he lies on his side.
So he's going to be making that much bread for his whole 390 days?
That would
I
be
don't
a lot
think
of
so.
bread, wouldn't
And it would mold.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a problem. God tells him to bake the bread with human dung.
Uh-huh.
Now, that's something that they don't do in Ezekiel 4:9 bread.
It wouldn't be a good marketing strategy.
I don't think so. And we'll see that Ezekiel doesn't like the idea either.
Okay.
God says, bake the bread with human dung
Uh-huh.
and make sure everyone's watching.
All right. So verse 13, the people of Israel will have to eat bread like this when I scatter them among the Gentiles.
So that's the point, you see.
No. Explain. He's going to scatter the Jews among the Gentiles.
Yeah. And I guess kind of they are now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jerusalem's been destroyed. And they're going to kind of be scattered around, I guess. And they're going to have to eat bread like this, cooked with human dung. Actually, the way that the Bible expresses it, it's not clear whether God is saying to use human dung, bake the bread with human dung. Now, I don't know whether that means to put
Human dung in the
bread,
recipe.
in the recipe, or whether he means to use human dung, you know, like you do a cow pie or something, as a fire to cook the bread.
Yeah.
I don't know which it is. But we'll see in the next verse that Ezekiel doesn't like the idea.
Ezekiel says to God, "Oh God, I've never eaten anything that offended you. Don't make me eat this abominable bread now." So it must have been in the bread.
Well, it would be pretty gross to bake bread over human dung, even if the human dung was being burned, wouldn't it?
I don't know. You know, I'm French. If the dung was really dry, I mean, does cow pie dung smell when you're making a fire?
I don't know. I think that cow dung is particularly good for making fires, but I don't know that human dung would ever get into that nice dried, because we don't eat grass and you know, we don't have as much roughage in our.
You're right. Not a good idea, God.
Either way, Ezekiel is not wild about it, so he's trying to talk God out of it. And God says in verse 15, okay, you can replace the human dung with cow dung when you bake the bread.
All right, so now it's sounding more like they're just cooking it with it, and they're not actually putting dung in the bread.
It doesn't really say that. It just instead you can replace in your recipe.
Yes.
List of ingredients. You can replace human dung with cow dung, or maybe in the instructions would say, cook your bread over cattle dung or human dung. Mm-hmm. So we don't know.
Okay, chapter 5.
No, we're not done yet. We got one more verse, 16. God's going to explain why he's doing all of this.
But, son of man, I'm going to cause a famine in Jerusalem. The people won't have enough bread and water to survive.
Yeah, so that's the point, I guess.
That's a good little tidbit to know.
Yeah, so they're going to all starve. And I think maybe because he's making this bread with human dung, that's kind of gross. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't want to eat it unless you were starving to death. Mm-hmm. And the people, they're not going to have any bread. They're going to wish they had some Ezekiel 4:12 bread.
I guess.
I'd like to see in the grocery store, instead of Ezekiel 4:9 bread, Ezekiel 4:12 bread, baked with human dung.
Okay. Now we're on to some other yes. Silly conversation.
Yeah.
God said, cut off your hair and beard with a knife, and then weigh the hair with a balance.
Burn 1/3 of the cut off hair in Jerusalem. Take another third and smite it about with a knife, and scatter the remaining third in the wind. I, that's God, will chase after the hair in the wind with my sword. I'd like to get a picture of that.
God obviously doesn't have enough to do.
Yeah.
That's a silly thing to ask.
Well.
And he's not really going to tell us what it means, is he?
I don't think so, no.
All right, so then verse 3, keep a few strands to tie on your skirt. Burn these strands in the fire later.
It doesn't say why.
I have an idea.
Okay.
You're going to lay on your side for 390 days and then an additional 40 days. And if you got hair like laying all over the grass and the human dung and
That's
that whole
true.
mess you got
He's
going on
gonna need
there,
a haircut.
this is for hygienic reasons.
Yes, but why would you weigh the hair and beard? And after you did that, why would you divide it into thirds and
Do silly things with it.
yeah, and then God's going to chase after it himself and smite it with his sword.
Verse 8, this is what God says. I myself am coming against you.
Because of your abominations, fathers will eat their sons, and sons will eat their fathers.
Who's he talking to?
Uh,
Whoever will listen. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. It doesn't matter.
I think he's talking to everyone.
Okay.
Everyone, at least all of the Jews.
All right. Verse 11. Since you have defiled my sanctuary with abominations and detestable things, I will have no pity on you.
A third of you will die with the pestilence and famine. Another third will die with the sword. And I'll scatter the remaining third to the winds, while I chase them with my sword.
That's it.
That's it. That was the whole point of that hair episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
He used that as an idiom.
Yeah, or a metaphor.
A metaphor.
I'm going to do it just like you were scattering your hair around, because that's not a metaphor. He was telling them to do that.
Yes.
And so he was scattering his hair and doing stuff with it, and God's going to do the same thing. He's dividing it into thirds, just like he divided his hair into thirds.
And he's going to do that to the people.
Yeah, we figured it out.
Great.
Yeah.
Verse 13. This will satisfy my anger and fury, and I will be comforted. And they'll know that I'm God.
Now that phrase, they will know that I am the Lord,
Uh-huh.
is used more than 60 times in the book of Ezekiel.
Really?
This is the first time it's used, and it's always in the same way. I'm going to do these horrible things to you,
Uh-huh.
and you'll know that I'm the Lord. Who else would do stuff like that?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But Steve,
Yeah.
this is starting to sound like the book of Jeremiah
Yeah.
with, kind of, I'm going to do these bad things to you.
Yeah, like Jeremiah on drugs or something.
Lovely. I thought we were done with that.
No. We got all of the prophets. We've got a long way to go.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, verse 14. I'll completely destroy you. All the nations will laugh at you as they pass by.
All your neighbors will be astonished when they see what happened to you.
I'll send the evil arrows of famine to destroy you by starving you to death.
I'll send wild beasts to eat you and bring pestilence, blood, and the sword to kill the survivors. I, God, have said it.
One more chapter.
Yeah.
Chapter 6. The word of God came to me, Ezekiel, saying, Son of man, turn your face towards the mountains and prophesy against them, saying, You mountains of Israel, hear the word of God.
This is what God says to the mountains, hills, rivers, and valleys. I, even I, am going to kill you with a sword and destroy your high places. I'll break your altars and images. I'll cast dead people in front of your idols.
I'll bury the idols in dead bodies and scatter bones around your altars. When the dead people will fall on you, you'll know that I am God.
But I'll let a few survive, who will be scattered abroad. They'll remember me with their whorish hearts and eyes that go a-whoring, and they'll hate themselves for committing abominations.
Then they'll know that I'm God, and remember that I said I'd do these evil things to them. All right. This God is talking to hills and valleys and rivers.
Yeah, he is.
He needs a mental evaluation.
I think so, yeah. Last little bit here.
Yep, verse 11.
Clap your hands and stomp your feet and say, The people of Israel will be killed by the sword, famine, and pestilence because of their abominations. Those who are far away will die from the pestilence. Those that are near will be killed with the sword, and everyone else will die in a famine. This is how I'll satisfy my fury on them.
And that's how you'll know that I am God.
Yeah.
Okay, I think he said it 3 times now in this little segment that we did today.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we know that he's God.
Yeah.
And now we know how to make Ezekiel 4:9 bread.
Yeah, and 4:12.
And 4:12. Okay, listeners, thanks for staying with us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.